Welcome, everyone. My name is Carley Garcia. I'm the Executive Director of the Feliciano Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Montclair State University, and welcome to week one of our weekly Women Entrepreneurship series. We are excited this week on Montclair State's campus to be talking about food innovation. And if you're receiving our updates, you saw earlier this week we had Denise Woodard from Partake Foods and also Chris Olef from Garden State Kitchen. Today we are excited to welcome two co-founders, also New Jersey based in Summit, Katie Jesionowski and Silvia Gianni, who are here with us from MySuperFoods. Welcome.
Thank you.
So thanks so much for being with us. We have some live participants today. We are also going to be rebroadcasting this interview later on the Feliciano Center's YouTube channel, as well as part of Propelify's Innovation Festival, focused on supporting innovators in New Jersey and beyond. So for those of you joining today, if you can use the chat feature to surface your questions as we go. I am going to be in conversation with the co-founders, but want to integrate any questions that you have for the MySuperFoods team. Please do that. The chat feature is in the middle of the bottom of your screen, and I will be monitoring it throughout the conversation. So without further ado, Silvia, Katie, what is MySuperFoods?
MySuperFoods is an organic snack food company. We like to say we make superfoods for super kids. Silvia and I met in New York City when we were pregnant with our first children, that happened to be twins. And so we wanted to create this portfolio of snacks. So we have 3 lines of cookies, granola bar bites, and mini popcorn chips.
Wow.
I would add to that, one of our goals from the very beginning was to earn parents' trust. We wanted to be a brand that was synonymous with, solid ingredients, really nutritious, allergy friendly, and with a strong social mission. And we wanted parents to trust us.
Wow, that's great. And those are big missions. And also both moms of twins. That's deserving of an interview unto itself. But you touched on this a little bit. You describe yourself on your website and as friends, moms, risk takers, advocates, leaders, warriors, entrepreneurs, enthusiasts, and revolutionists. I love this. This is a lot of words, a lot of sort of things related to your mission. So tell us more about that. I mean, leaders, warriors, enthusiasts. That's huge. Expand a little bit on that.
So I would say the reason we wrote friends first is because as business partners, we decided from the very beginning that our friendship would always come first, ahead of the business. And I think a lot of people are often amazed. We are very close in our personal lives, and we work together every single day. And people wonder, like, how do you make it work? Because it's somewhat like a marriage. And, for us, it's because we prioritize our friendship, and we are extremely respectful of each other, and we talk through issues. And even when, we don't agree, we're great at compromise. So it was important for us in our company mission to value our friendship. I think that's why friends are first. I also comment on the advocates and warriors. I would say in the food space, we are trying to change things, right? We're trying to revolutionize food. We're trying to clean up food. We're trying to make it nutritious and delicious at the same time, which historically hasn't always been the case. Food marketed at children. And so we feel like warriors, and, like my business card actually says, co-founder and revolutionist, because that's how I feel. Like we're trying to revolutionize the way kids snack. And so
I would also add that my business card says co-founder and enthusiast. So that's where those 2 words came from. Silvia and I personally spend a lot of time, learning new things, growing as people, growing as partners, always thinking about our customers. We don't happen to have any children with food allergies. We are very fortunate to work with co-packers that have allergy-friendly environments to create snacks for families who do. And our customers are grateful for that. So we're always wanting to advocate for those families who don't want to sacrifice nutrition because of the situation that they are faced in their family, and also our social mission, which is to help fight child hunger in the US. We've partnered with 6 food banks across the country, so advocating for families who might want really high quality, delicious snacks for their kids, but we all know those snacks right now are just more expensive.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
Whatever we can do to participate to help those families is very important to us too.
That's great. That's great. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that social mission and the food bank support that you have. So all of this is really excellent. And Silvia, what you mentioned about sort of cleaning up food and cleaning up snacking, all of this is really ambitious because you're fighting against an industry with kind of entrenched, values and distribution channels. Tell us a little bit about, how you first introduced your snacks. Were they an instant hit? Tell us a little bit about that customer discovery process.
So I'll tell you how we first introduced our snacks, which was in a Ziploc bag to a buyer at Whole Foods. It's also, sometimes I think it's a little beneficial to be naive as to how the industry actually works. We were just these like 2 ambitious, business women and moms. And we finally, landed on a product. The product idea started in Katie's kitchen. She went through iteration after iteration at home. She would go to Whole Foods with, twins who were 14 months old, 15 months old, in the big double stroller that barely fits through any door in Manhattan, and would buy all these ingredients and kept trying to make our granola bites. And then we kind of narrowed in on something that we thought worked, that had superfoods, was low in sugar and was really nutritious, but tasted great. And then we had to find a food scientist. So went through that process. And I would, just pause here to give a piece of advice to any entrepreneurs, really network. Like, we got to our food scientist through like 4 different people that we met because we kept talking about our story and what we were trying to do. And eventually found somebody who knew our food scientists, because some things you just can't find in Google searches, no matter how hard you try. And I would say our industry is, still, like very close to farming. And so it's not the most sophisticated in that sense. There aren't a lot of like directories with information. Anyway, so we get close to this, we get this final formula that really works. From our food scientists, but we don't have our packaging, but we don't want to waste any time because we're subject to a review calendar, right? It's like they're only reviewing, kid snacks between, September 1st and October 15th of, 2000, what was it? 11, 12, I guess. And so we're like, we have to just show up. So we showed up with the Ziploc bag and a picture of our packaging, and he loved it. And he said yes. So that was, that was kind of our way in to the industry, which was amazing because it was Whole Foods and we got into the whole region.
I would also say we got really great advice. We happen to live in New York City. We got advice to really, stay in your backyard. Don't try to grow too big too fast. Something changes, and when it does, you need to be able to be nimble enough to adapt to it. So we did that. We walked into Whole Foods, just as Silvia said, but then we walked up and down the street to every little store we could find, and door by door by door got in. And that the interesting thing about getting in and getting started is that it's ultimately much easier than staying in. And we had no idea that was the case. Obviously, again, echoing Silvia's sentiment about things that you don't know. But it's just relentless hard work over and over and over to just get it exposed to new people.
Wow. Yeah, to answer your question about, I think how, were they an instant hit? I mean, I would say we definitely demoed a lot in the beginning. Like when we were at Whole Foods, which was great because Katie and I got to demo ourselves, which I think there's no better way to get customer feedback and like an instant reaction than when the toddler in the stroller tries the food. Like that was really honest. And yeah, I think we definitely had a loyal base from the beginning, but you know, our marketing efforts were limited, right? Because at this point, we're still bootstrapping it. Like we were, you know, we were self-funding.
Yeah,
So
no,
yeah.
this is really interesting. And I'm just thinking of a follow-up question about sort of your target customer then and your target customer now. Are he and she the same people, or has it evolved just in terms of the type of parent or the type of customer? They don't necessarily have to be parents that you are targeting.
I think our customer has not changed. I think how we can get to them has changed. How what they're looking for has changed. How they find information has changed. So, you know, we are our customer, and our friends, when we had, you know, those 18-month-old toddlers, they were our customers. So we knew them inside and out. And then it was the older families that we were getting to know. And so now we've kind of grown up with our target family. But, you know, in the rise of all social media, all media transitioning in general, and how people look for new products and interact with brands, I think that's what's changed the most. It's not necessarily what that family looks like. It's really how we're communicating with them.
Yeah, that's great. So in demoing your product in Whole Foods with, or potentially at home, you know, at home in your apartments, each of you have a set of twins plus other jobs. I'm curious to sort of know about, you know, your backgrounds. One of you was in banking, one of you was in advertising. You decided to leave your old work identities and really double down on this, you know, business together. Tell us a little bit about that process. How was it to juggle being new moms with a business idea and another job? And then what was the catalyst to say, I'm not going to be that other thing anymore. I'm going to be this with her? How did that happen?
So Katie left her job first before you had the girls, right?
Yeah, just before, with the intent to stay home. That was my intent.
And then I went back to work when my twins were about 4.5 months old, and went back for about a year and was really struggling because it was very long hours. I mean, I lived walking distance to my office, and I still was gone from like 7 to almost 7 every day. And that was like taking a toll on me. And once, you know, they were old enough where they were like interacting and like they were asking for their nanny over me, it started to really be painful. And I realized like, I just don't know how to do this long term. And I, you know, kind of just had this, like, I want to do something else, you know, like this is the time, like if there's ever going to be a time, it's going to be now. And so I reached out to Katie. We had, you know, become friends when we were pregnant with the girls, and we're talking about food all the time. Well, boy, girl for me, girls for Katie. We were talking about food all the time. We were sharing recipes because we pureed all their baby food, and Katie was a couple of months ahead of me. So we were constantly talking about it. And so I was at her house for a play date and talked about, like, mentioned my idea, and she seemed really interested in it. And so that night I basically just roped her in. I just said like, hey, why don't you do this with me? And I still don't think she ever said yes. But the next day we were basically like at a coffee shop and, you know, kind of drafting our plan. And I think I had left my job already, probably maybe a week or two before that.
And I was, you know, that play date, I was very interested. It was very interesting to me. It hit my, you know, my interest in food, my interest in business, my interest in marketing. But to me, it literally was a really exciting conversation. There was absolutely no part of me that was hoping or wondering if she would ask me to go along. But I realized probably much later than I should have that I really was looking for something, was wanting something, but there was nothing on my landscape that I was aware of that fit that need in that way that I wanted. And it really wasn't about time spent, because obviously this took a lot of our time in the beginning. It was really more the interest and the passion behind something that was important enough to me to take time away from my kids and make me a better mom ultimately.
Yeah, wow. We talk a lot with our students at Montclair State about the importance of forming teams. And so I'm always interested when we speak with co-founders about sort of how that team building process happened. So thanks for sharing that. It's really personal, but also really informative about, you know, taking the plunge. That's great. So tell us a little bit more about another topic that we talk a lot about, which is funding. How was your business idea originally funded? Have you raised funding? Have you raised angel, investment? Tell us a little bit more about that.
So, go ahead, Katie.
So we self-funded for, I would say, 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years.
And, again, didn't really have a clear sense, was truly bootstrapping every single step of the way and not doing anything above and beyond what absolutely had to be done. So that, I think, made us set the groundwork for us to today where we behave in a very similar way. We're very mindful of every dollar spent still, because it doesn't really matter how much is in the bank, it's how you're spending it. So I think we're really effective at that. And then, we were very fortunate to start asking friends and family and getting a lot of yeses. I have a really good friend from college who, after they had committed and, we were on the phone talking about it, said to me, I gave you the amount of money that I was willing to lose and not, be upset at you and lose our friendship. And I thought that was such an interesting reminder that we had a lot of people in our corner that believed in us. They believed in our idea, but when you're investing at that stage, it's really, what they thought of Silvia and I together. And so I'm grateful that all those people saw what we knew we had and what we know we have, because I think at any stage, that's what people are investing in.
Yeah, and we still, we're still kind of in that stage. We've definitely, I would say, expanded maybe one layer outside that circle to like friends of friends. So we've had friends reach out and be like, oh, I know this company that's raising capital and they've come in. But there's, we truly don't have any real, what you would deem outside money. We don't have any VC money or private equity money or just like angel investors that we don't know. And it is amazing how those personal connections matter because they really are invested in your business and they want to see you do well. And there's absolutely no pressure, because sometimes, as an entrepreneur, it can be painful, it can be painful to sometimes deliver a message, if you don't have the best year, you don't have the best news, or you just lost placement in a really, store that, you thought was going to knock it out of the park. And we have never once had anything from complete and total support. Don't worry, you guys got this, you're going to come back, you're going to, and we always have. But I think that, just choosing the right investors, I think matters because, we have heard some, not so great stories about choosing investors that, maybe place too much pressure. I personally know of another company who, one of the founders spends a lot of time just making spreadsheets for investors, which we just don't have the bandwidth for. I couldn't imagine one of us spending all our time just providing data to investors. So, our investors are very on an extremely tight ship. It's lean. And, we definitely, provide them with information, but certainly not on a weekly basis because, we're trying to focus on growing this business and you can't do both. So I think we've been extremely fortunate with, I think, a really great set of investors.
Yeah, that's great. And you've echoed something we've talked about before in this series, which is, investors really invest in the entrepreneur, in you two. And so that's really powerful feedback. I want to take a question from Rich, which is a really interesting one. And it kind of goes back to talking about your customers. Mm-hmm. So Rich asks, putting parents aside, B2C market, how have you introduced your products to B2B markets, like institutional dining, or even schools, I would add? And then there's a follow-up question, but I'll wait for your response there first.
So we had very early luck and got partnered with Alaska Airlines. They sought us out. They were looking for a new product for their kids' in-flight box offering. We worked with them for 4 years, which is probably 3 years longer than most companies get the opportunity to work with a company like that. So that really opened our eyes because they sought us out to the diversification of our customer base. In the beginning, we thought Whole Foods, stores like Whole Foods, this is a home run where we belong, but there's actually quite a lot of opportunity and it's in our best interest to diversify that. So about 2 years ago, Silvia sent me an email and we had talked about schools, but it's its own situation. It requires full attention at all times, and there's a lot to learn about it. And she said, am I crazy to think that one of us should give this a go? And I said, no, I don't think you're crazy at all. And I think I'd like to do it. So I spent the last 2 years calling every nutrition director in the country. And, you know, we had a great start last year. We were really excited about what was happening. And this year we were set up to launch in about 5 states with some meaningful placement. And all of that was supposed to happen in April and May. And you can imagine what happened to schools in March. So all of that disappeared. You know, so that's kind of what happens. I've said since that time, I mean, we did a great job of coming together, and I'll give Silvia the credit because she said it first, was, you know, we just have to pivot. We have to find the new thing and make it happen. You know, there's a time for emotion, there's a time for motivation, this is the time for the work. So we said schools are going to just go over here, and there's nothing we can do about that for right now. So, you know, it's such an important lesson for all entrepreneurs at all times, but this year is the masterclass for entrepreneurs. And the thing that I've said since March is entrepreneurs were made for 2020, because all we do is face adversity. All we do is face challenges. And so it's a lot, but it's not that different from the all the time situations that we're in.
Wow. Yeah. Great perspective. Great answer. So the next question here talks a little bit about marketing distribution, but in particular, your package design. So what success have you had with your package design and messaging? It's obviously very distinct enough for Alaska Airlines to be interested not only in what's inside the packaging, but that the outside of the packaging looked on brand enough for a major airline. Tell us a little bit about your marketing strategy, in particular your packaging.
So we wanted to involve our kids in this company from day one. We wanted to create characters that, you know, were in the spirit of our children. I wouldn't say they exactly resemble them anymore. They kind of did when they were toddlers. They've obviously grown up a bit. And this is, you know, where I would say, again, your network is everything. You know, through my husband works in advertising, and through him, you know, got connected to an illustrator who had done work for Nickelodeon and had some downtime. And we went to their animation studios where, you know, she worked, and we presented them with our like mood board, like this is what we're thinking. And they came back to us with dozens of different characters. And once we saw our characters, we're like, this is it. These are these kids. And at the time there was 4, right?
Yep.
Tristan, there was only 4. Yeah, Tristan came with her.
Note, Silvia was pregnant in the very early stages of this company and didn't know it.
Yeah.
She has, like, you know, climbed an even crazier hill in this process.
So so that was going to be like the core of our brand. Was going to be these super kids who each, you know, represented a facet of nutrition, whether it's antioxidants and minerals, and so, you know, and then the rest of the package design was really us just putting it all together. We found a woman who used to work for Kraft. She's based in
Wisconsin.
And we've worked with her ever since. We just send her, like, she knows exactly how to, you know, lay all the artwork out on the package. She knows, you know, where to put the, you know, weight, ounce it, you know, you need that. She knows all that regulation. And so we just literally put it together. We've never worked with a branding agency or any type of designer. We've got people to put the pieces together. I want to say that same illustrator also created our logo. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And so we just put the pieces together. We work with our, the woman who does the packaging I just mentioned, Wisconsin, on different fonts. We'll say, try this font, you know, try this color. And we just iterate until we get to that place. But we wanted, you know, we felt at the time, and this has definitely changed, but at the time, all of the really clean food was in very like white and beige packaging. Like it looked very clean. And I get that they were trying to market to parents, but we wanted to get kids excited, right? We had kids at that age where if you walk down that aisle at Whole Foods, which was our like, you know, Holy Grail aisle, it was like, oh, I want the Elmo box. Didn't matter what was in the Elmo box. Like they just wanted the Elmo. So we knew that kids responded to that. And we had also read several Mintel reports that basically said kids become influential at the age of 3, and by like 6 years old, they're influencing like 80% of household grocery decisions. And so kids had to be excited as well, not just the parents. Like we weren't just marketing to parents, so we had to find this like way to like, how do we create this package that gets kids excited, but parents feel great about too.
Wow, that's a lot of data to look at and incorporate, and that makes a sense in what you on. Talk a little bit about distribution. So you talked about and sort of the early strategy with their brand. Do you know where else do you sell, and are there any channels that you would sell at or through, you know, from an e-commerce perspective?
So right now in e-commerce, our two main channels are Amazon and Thrive Market. On Amazon, we're one of the best-selling kid snacks. One of the top, we're like Amazon's choice, and we come up, you know, under kids organic snacks, kids cookies. Like we're in all the, you know, search terms that you would think a parent would enter. We show up on page 1. So it's been incredibly successful. It's an expensive channel to work in. I'll be brutally honest about that. But we see it as a marketing tool as well. You know, you buy us on Amazon, you'll kind of know who we are, and maybe next time you go into a store. So it kind of works hand in hand. Thrive has been a really successful channel for us. We are, you know, we will be launching on like Walmart.com soon. So, you know, we don't know how that will do, but we kind of feel like, why not, as far as e-commerce. And then fairly soon, Katie is launching. Go ahead.
So we've never distributed our own products. We've never sold our own products on our website. When we started, I remember this because it was a woman that I worked with in advertising. We asked if she could help us build e-com into our website, and she said it would be $23,000. And I assumed that was the friend discount. There was no Shopify back then. There was no, you know, there was no easy way, inexpensive way to set that up. So, you know, 2020 feels like, why not? Take advantage of the people that we interact with on social media who say, oh, I didn't know you made mini popcorn chips. Where can I find them? And we're not sold in their city. Take advantage of, you know, the success on Amazon. It's a proven model online. Take advantage of the opportunity to surprise people with a sample of something new if they're willing to buy from us. So it just feels like a why not scenario. You know, it's not an easy undertaking, but we're pretty good at that. So yeah, I'm excited for it because it's also a meaningful opportunity to take advantage of in a time where, you know, I'm coming off of the school situation. So it feels like a purpose again to really help grow the company.
Wow, that is fantastic and a great undertaking right now in this crazy moment. Congratulations to you guys. When can we expect e-commerce at MySuperFoods?
It will be live on Monday.
Oh my gosh, very timely conversation. Yes. Okay, live on Monday. We'll make sure that we circulate that in addition to this. That's great.
Okay. Add to that I just want to add one more thing. I think one of the benefits as well is Amazon over the years has really restricted the amount of data you have about who's buying your product. So you used to have way more information. We are allowed to communicate with them through Amazon, right? So we have these like back end Amazon subscriptions with outside vendors that allow us to send, you know, follow-up emails and ask for reviews, but you can never send them to your website. You can't really do much. Amazon has a lot of rules, and I understand, right? They own the Prime members and they take them very seriously. But it allows us, you know, to, I think, own that data and communicate with our customers the way we want to communicate with our customers instead of having our hands really tied. So that was very beneficial, I think, as well. That's, I think, a huge upside to selling direct.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. We have about 10 minutes left with our founders. I have a few more questions. Rich, I'm going to circle back to your third question, but make sure if you have questions for our co-founders to put them in the chat. I want to make sure to get to what Katie mentioned at our opening around being a mission-driven brand and the work you've done with food banks and your work, just sort of your macro work around changing food for kids and what kids put in their bodies, what we all put in our bodies. Can you tell us a little bit about your social mission to end child hunger? And then in particular, the number of the food donated, the 230,000 meals is an enormous number. Tell us a little bit about sort of how that plays into your strategy and what it means to your brand to be doing this.
So I remember, in those early coffee shop days where we were meeting in New York City, drafting the idea of this company, we wanted to do something with children. And as moms, we got there very quickly. It was like thinking about hungry kids just is unbearable. So it was just, okay, so who do we partner with right away? The Food Bank of New York City is a highly respected organization, and I reached out, and we had conversations, and they were wonderful. So we couldn't figure out a way to commit like a 1-for-1. There's a lot of great models to do it. So we committed to growing our partnerships every year. So we'll start in New York, and we're going to dream big, and we're going to want to partner with food banks all over the country. And so slowly, year by year, we both happened to move to New Jersey. We partnered up with the Community Food Bank of New Jersey. And then we started working with Alaska Airlines, and we added Seattle to the mix, where they're headquartered. And so, we've just kind of grown organically that way. And, almost every program has a backpack program that is very effective throughout the year, and particularly in the summer, where and our town participates in it with children in our school system. The teachers put a bag full of food for the weekend into a child's backpack so that their classmates don't necessarily know what's going on. That's usually where our funds are directed, because we like to be specific to helping kids and families. And so, that's the monetary portion, but our team has volunteered in food banks, making meals and getting to know the staff, donating products whenever we can. Particularly this year, we donated a lot of product in the early first quarter, end of first quarter, and just like to, kind of do as much as we can in that way. Obviously, those organizations are set up so well that, the money is usually the best option to make the most of a difference. But we like to, not just write a check, to actually, get our hands on the project and involve the whole team.
And I would say one of the bigger struggles with being a premium brand, right? Like organic ingredients are just expensive. Like we're still, 1 to 2% of all farmland in the U.S. is organic. So there's still a pretty big supply demand issue. We use expensive things like, chia seeds and, baobab. And, in hindsight, it's like we weren't even thinking. It was just like, oh, let's just make this amazing thing. And it's, actually quite expensive. And so the pain point for us is like, the kids who, there are kids who need it, who just don't have access to it. And so I think, we realized very quickly that like, one way to maybe remedy that is to donate as much product as we can and hopefully kind of try to bridge the gap that way. We also, I think, continue to focus on bringing our costs down. And when we brought our costs down, we have passed on. We found a way to make our granola bites for less, and we, brought the price down from, $2.99 to $1.99 to make it more accessible. Like that's really important to us.
That's great. That's great. Thanks for explaining that. It makes a ton of sense. And I think it's very mission aligned with what you had told us at the beginning of this. 2 more questions and then we'll be out of time, but I want to raise one that Max just raised in the chat around social media and how, Katie touched on it a little bit, how important it's been, what part of the overall sort of marketing mix it is for you. And then I guess I would tag on one more question. We didn't talk about the size of your team now and how many people you've hired. Do you have someone that manages social media? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's me. Yeah, we wanted to be the voice behind the brand. So we had split it in the beginning, and that just doesn't work very well. It's hard to kind of be saying the same things at the same time, and it also just is, makes more sense for one of us to manage, an entire project. So I'm the person that will respond to your DMs or your comments or your questions. We look at it like customer service. There are certainly questions about ingredients. The allergy families have a lot of questions. And so I would be hesitant to hand that off to someone in early stage, because it's important that they're heard and they're answered. And sometimes it's 2 or 3 back and forths before they really feel comfortable with the situation. And I understand why. I'm a mom, so I understand that's a really big deal. But it's also fun to, introduce one of our other product lines to somebody, or to follow back on a customer and then say, hey, I see it's your daughter's birthday. Can I send you a snack? And surprise them in those ways, because that's our strength right now. We can't buy big advertising space. We do have, Silvia does a great job on Amazon. So we're, constantly, spending there where it makes sense the most with search terms in particular. And we'll get more into Instagram and Facebook. We've dabbled in it a little bit, but we'll support the new e-commerce offering there. But, we're small and scrappy, and we have succeeded because of that. So it doesn't make sense to, hire an outside agency and throw a lot of money at something when it can be done, and it is really us. I mean, and, like Silvia said before, we hang out a lot outside of work scenarios. And I think people really appreciate that. They see that we are actually friends, and we are actually moms and people, and it just rounds out the story, which is, our greatest asset is our story and our authentic story. So that's important, I think, to show to people.
Yeah, like we can't compete with, like General Mills in many ways. But we do have our edge is that this is us. It's not a team of people in an office somewhere. Like these are the people behind the brand. And to answer your question about our team actually is quite small. It's, aligns up with, exactly what we mentioned before, which is, we are really lean. So we have a marketing director who's been with us since, I think, 1 year in. She's still with us. And, we pretty much, we hire marketing and demo people around the country as we need them. And everything else we sort of outsource. We outsource a bookkeeper and, legal and things like that. We don't keep those people on staff because we just don't think it's necessary. And especially this year, we actually got leaner. We had an operations person that we had to let go of and absorb that work because, we realized very quickly that, it wasn't going to be easy to come across funding this year. And so the only kind of way to keep going was to bring our costs way down. And so it was a painful decision, but, we kind of had to do it to ensure that we could continue to invest in our business and grow our business so that, our numbers, which, the great news is that we're having the best year we've ever had. We're up really big over last year. So it's, we feel extremely grateful for that. And many businesses can't say that this year. But in order to achieve that, we had to even slim down even more than we were before. So we're a small team.
Right. And I think also because, we always have to be looking ahead.
Yeah.
So year of our lives, prepare for next year,
Yeah.
And that requires some tough decisions sometimes. But I truly believe that every decision that we made in March and April has kept us going.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Thank you both for sharing so much of that and that journey, and the authentic self definitely comes. The authenticity of the two of you definitely comes through in the brand side. You're clearly self-aware. That's great. That's great. Okay, so one final question in the few minutes we have remaining. I'm going to go back to a question that Rich surfaced a few minutes ago, and it's typically the question we end on, especially for our students and early stage entrepreneurs who are looking to learn from co-founders like you, which is really sort of your nuggets of advice. If you could pay it forward with do's and don'ts for early stage entrepreneurs who are sort of versions of you from years ago and they're in this moment. Rich asks also, if you wouldn't mind adding, what was your greatest failure and lessons learned from this journey? For the both of you, how would you answer that question?
Do you want to answer that question first and then the advice? Okay. Oh, dear. Failure. There's been so many. Let me just pick one. Let's see. What felt like the biggest failure for me, which, you know, in hindsight, I recognize, and I'll give you two just to round it out. But one for me was we got into Target. So we basically launched granola bites in 2012, and then we launched cookies in 2014. And our cookies just like took off. Like everybody wanted them, and Target wanted them. And I was like, oh my God, we made it. Like we made it in Target. There's like 1,700 stores, and they brought us initially into 300 or 400, and they were going to expand it. We were in 2 sets because the baby buyer and the cookie buyer wanted it. Like they were fighting over it. It was like a dream come true. And Target had this big push behind organic, right? They were bringing in, I don't know if you remember this, but 2015, Target basically like took a lot of conventional brands off the shelf and gave the space to organic brands. But what happened was that, you know, within 6 to 9 months, management realized they're not making as much money in grocery because, you know, it's a cycle. You need to give people time to adapt and to learn the new brands and buy the new brands. Like no one's going to buy new organic brand at the same velocity that they may buy Oreos or Chips Ahoy. They didn't really give it that time, right? Because investors are impatient, like coming from banking, like I know this, investors are like quarter to quarter. There's no patience for like, oh no, in a year, you'll see that this paid off. Like, no, like what happened this quarter? And, you know, the CEO was put under a lot of pressure and they completely reversed course and took a lot of organic brands off the shelf. We were one of them. And I felt like, oh my gosh, how, you know, one, I was mortified to tell our investors. I thought like, yeah, it was like, horrible day. It was a horrible month for me. How are we going to tell our investors? And this is it. Like, we're never going to bounce back from this. So that felt like a huge failure that was completely out of our control. And I would say the second for me was I had been convinced, and this is also going to loop into like my advice for an entrepreneur. We got advice from other entrepreneurs at trade shows. Like everyone was like, you need a broker, you have to work with a broker. You know, there's no way you're going to get into these stores on your own. So we went through these cycles for the first, I would say 3 or 4 years where we would hire these brokers. They would promise us the world. They're extremely expensive. And they really didn't deliver. And you're tied into these contracts for a year, and then you fire that broker and you go on to the next one. And we finally got to a place where we were like, you know what? We're going to do this our way. Like there is not one way to do it. And that's my golden piece of advice. Like there isn't one way to do this. Like somebody else may have been very successful with using a broker, or may have been very successful at Target, or there isn't one way to do it. And so you realize as an entrepreneur, it's no different than your personal life. Your journey is your journey. It doesn't have to look like anyone else's journey. And so that would be my like one piece of advice. My other piece of advice would be like truly find a partner if you can, because I think it's very hard to do this by yourself, or at least a team that is going to stick with you, because I cannot imagine I don't think I would have gone this far, because the lows can be really low and you kind of need someone to like keep propelling you forward, and they don't always happen at the same time. Right. So, you know, my lows may be, you know, different than Katie's. And so having a partner there really, really helps. So that's my 2 pieces of advice.
So I was going to say what I always tell people is kind of echoing what Sylvia's saying, which is, you know, talk to as many people as you can. use as many resources as you can. But the moment someone says, if you don't do it this way, you won't make it, you can start doing anything else in your head, because that person is not interested in you. They're interested in being the one who was right about the thing that you should do. And it's really important to distinguish that that's their intent. It has nothing to do with you. You're not doing anything wrong. They just really believe in their thing. And so that's fine, but that's not helping you. So find those people who will be honest. You want somebody to say, that thing you're doing is not helping you. I had 2 people in 1 week tell me, you need to tell your story more on social media. People want to hear it. In my head, I was saying, if I tell this story one more time, people are going to start laughing at me. But every single time I post a picture of Silvia and I, engagement goes through the roof. For some reason, people want to keep seeing us. It doesn't make sense to me because I'm not somebody who would ever have an Instagram account talking about myself outside of this, but it works. So I listened because they were right. But that had nothing to do with, this is the only way. It was, I see this as a great idea for you. I would say my low was the school situation this year. I was really down about it. And I had more than one period of being down about it because this was an emotional year. And I still don't know what's going to happen with it, but I have just decided to put it over here. And I check in and I, water it a little bit, see if it'll come back to life. But my effort is better spent elsewhere. So it's that, if something's not working, let it not work, and then go find something else that you can put your effort behind so that you don't get so down on yourself that you miss all the other opportunities.
Yeah, great advice, both of you. Thanks for sharing your failure moments, which, to us sound more like learning experiences that you just, were able to thrive in a really serious way after. So thank you so much for sharing all of this. I would also say too, we're so lucky to have you in New Jersey. You've dug in, you've stayed. So thanks for building your business here and for sharing your story with us. We're a few minutes over time, so we're going to wrap, but please join me in thanking both Katie and Silvia from MySuperFoods. And I know we're going to see you again. Thanks, both of you.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.